Welcome to the Stronger After Stroke podcast. I'm your host, Rosa Hart, the stroke nurse navigator for Norton Healthcare. And today I have a very special guest, David Todd. Thank you for being with us today, David.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So David is a stroke survivor, and here on the Stronger After Stroke podcast, we are aiming to deliver answers to frequently asked questions, as well as encouraging stories to let you know that if you have a stroke, that doesn't mean that your life is over. And you are a shining example of that, David. So thank you so much for being willing to share with us today.
Thank you.
So can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do for work, and then about the day of your stroke?
I work for Pleasure Ridge Park Fire Protection District. I'm assigned to the training division, and I'm their quality assurance officer reviewing documentation and so forth to make sure we're compliant with state requirements.
Do you help teach as well?
Yes.
I thought so. And tell us about the day of your stroke. What happened?
It was July 3rd of 2022, and it was about 2:45 in the morning, which is, I was awake watching movies with my wife, and that's unusual for me because I go to bed very early. I felt that something was wrong, and I thought it was my blood sugar was low. And I usually treat those on my own. I don't ask for help, but I couldn't get up. And I asked my wife to hand me my glucometer, and she kept putting it into my right hand, and I kept dropping it, couldn't hold it. And so she got a little bit frustrated with me, and I asked her to hand it to me again, and I grabbed it with my left hand. That worked fine. I did get my blood sugar checked and realized that it was well within normal range, and I knew something was very wrong at that point.
Yeah, and that's something that you would know from EMS, even if you weren't diabetic, is that blood sugar could cause stroke-like symptoms if it fluctuates too drastically, high or low, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's one thing we check when someone comes in with signs of a stroke is check their blood sugar.
Right.
See if we can fix this easily. So then what did you do?
My wife told me, she said, your speech is really slurred. And I knew right then that my life had just changed. I knew what was going on. And I was able to get off the couch, but falling to my right. And I needed the wall and so forth to help me stay up. And I went to the bathroom and really tried to do a stroke scale exam on myself, which you should never treat yourself. But I saw my face, and I knew right then and there, we got to get to the hospital. And in all that time, because the way my devices work, I could tell exactly what time it occurred, when it happened. It was, in case I forgot, when I got to the hospital, I could show the staff there. That's when the event started.
That's very important information, because with any stroke, our other question after the blood sugar is, how long has it been since the symptoms started? And that's called the last known well.
Right. And for me, it was about 40 minutes when I got to the hospital. And by the time I got to the emergency department, I was down to being able just to say one word, but it wasn't very clear. And I remember the nurse that met me, the only thing I could say was stroke. And there was somebody else that came out who apparently knew me, and I don't know who they were, but knew something was wrong as well.
So did you get any treatments like the blood clot buster or the surgery?
No, it was talked about, but the question was, would it be too risky for me to have? So it was opted not to do that.
And every person is different.
Yes.
We've got really good safety profiles on Alteplase and TNK that are given to break up a clot in your brain medicinally. through your IV, or we have a procedure called the mechanical thrombectomy where a neurosurgeon could pull the blood clot out of the brain, but it's always a risk versus benefit, and every person is different. So it's always taken into consideration. And so I'm really thankful that you had such a great outcome, even though you didn't get to have that treatment.
Right.
So what was your recovery like?
Well, I spent 5 days in intensive care, and then I was discharged to a wonderful place called Cressman Rehab, and the team there is second to none.
For outpatient therapy?
It was outpatient therapy 3 days a week, and I did occupational therapy, speech therapy, and then transitioned into physical therapy. And now I'm at a lab here at Women and Children's.
The Motec Lab?
It's the Motec Lab. They do call it by another name.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember what that is, but it's the Motec Lab. And there's only 6 of these labs throughout the world, and 4 of them are in the U.S. And fortunately, you all have it here with Norton Healthcare, and I think it's one of the best kept secrets out there.
It's a really high-tech way to help increase your mobility through 3D.
Yes.
Yeah. So
My problem is with neurostimulation. So when I get around a lot of people, a lot of noise, and fast-moving things, I tend to shut down. And it's also building up strength in helping with my endurance.
yeah, and you're still like back to work every day with the public, or mostly just your coworkers?
With my coworkers, I do get some public interaction, but the fire district brought me back. They've been great with that. They are very supportive of me attending rehab sessions like I should.
Good.
And I can't speak highly enough about that because some employers aren't quite that tolerant.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I really want to zoom in on in your recovery is how you've been able to go back to doing activities that you loved, but it may look like a different way. I think you described to me that you loved to cook and you used to do that a lot independently. And so now you've started to cook alongside your family and you do things together.
I have, and this Thanksgiving is the first Thanksgiving or holiday that I could actually cook since the stroke. But while cooking and having all the family over, it became a little bit too much for me. But my family stepped in, and my son's girlfriend and my daughter's boyfriend also stepped in to help out, so it made it much more pleasant for me.
Good.
So it was a success. So yeah, I'm getting that back. It's just going to take time.
Definitely. And tell us about your hobbies.
I love to backpack and hike. I've not gotten on the trail for the most part since the stroke, just because I don't have the strength yet.
Now, what constitutes a trail for you? Because you were showing me some pictures of a trip that looked pretty strenuous.
When I go out backpacking, it could be go out Thursday or Friday, and we don't come off the trail until Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. So we're out. What I showed you was in South Dakota, and we went to the Badlands, and it's phenomenal. And they have trails that you can really spend a good day on and spend at least 10 miles on. We went on a trail, 2 trails, and they were selected with intent because of stairs. And I do have trouble with stairs.
So how do you make adjustments for that now?
I like my load, so on the first set of stairs, I had a day pack with me that just had what key essential emergency stuff I would need, and that would be for managing my blood sugar if that needed to happen, and then water. Other than that, nothing, because it was going to be too much. So my son actually went through that trail with me on the stairs, and that was a little over 450 something stairs on the trail that you saw, and so it's an up, around, and down. But on the second set, we were put on that trail by one of the federal park rangers, and it was described as steps going up. It turned out it was not steps really going up. It was essentially a kind of a ladder made out of logs and cables.
Oh my.
But I had a strong team with me to make that happen. So everything was planned. So there were people at the top helping me, there were people on the bottom helping me, and there were actually people that went up behind me in case I lost my balance or my grip or whatnot. I was going to be caught, and I was going to be safe. And then once we got up to the top, I was up there for a while because there was only one way in and one way out, and that was up and down. So I did have to take a break for about 30 minutes at the top before I could come on back down.
Yeah. When you had your stroke, were you afraid that you would never get to do things like that again?
Yes. I actually didn't think I was going to get to go back to work. I didn't think that I was going to go camping again. I didn't think I was going to be able to cook again. All those things came into play. I still have to learn how to tie knots all over again because I forgot how to. I still have to learn how to set up a tent by myself, and that's coming. When I try and do it now, I just get so tired, I can't get it all done. But I've got good mentors around me, and we'll get there.
What are some adjustments that you learned in this family trip out to the Badlands that you feel like are good takeaways that you will use in future trips? Because I think a lot of people are afraid to get back into traveling, let alone to start traveling if they never had the time to before and they have a stroke. And like, is that something that they could make accessible? On the medical side, we always want to give the advice, if you're traveling in a car, then you want to make sure that you're taking plenty of potty breaks and staying hydrated and getting up and walking at least every 2 hours. So take a potty break, stretch your legs at a rest stop or gas station or whatever if you can, and not try to deprive yourself of water in order to have minimal potty breaks because the priorities change.
Right.
And I think that used to be a competition for a lot of people, is to see who can take the fewest amount of potty breaks on a road trip, right? But
On my road trips, I've got a timeline, a plan. I don't want to make stops. Now I do, and when we made this trip, we did take a lot of trips because I did get exhausted, but I had other drivers to take the place of driving. But a trick that I always keep a case of water bottles in my car, so it's going to force you from drinking water to take those breaks because you can't go further. But I plan my day around the time zone that I'm in, so I don't have to figure out when do I need to take my medicines, what time I need to take my medicines. If I'm going to be gone a week, I just stay on the time zone that Louisville, Kentucky is in, and that may mean I'm taking my medicine at a different time where I'm at, but it's still the same time I would take it in at home.
Yeah, let's talk about a few of the medicines that are pretty important for preventing stroke that you have been on. I think one of them is for blood pressure.
Yes.
Metoprolol. And it's very important to not just stop taking that if you're going to go on an adventure, because you might have rebound hypertension, which gets your blood pressure way too high. And then Eliquis
Yes.
for atrial fibrillation, because the Eliquis is a blood thinner, kind of like warfarin or Xarelto, and thins the blood so that clots don't form in the heart while it's beating irregularly. And Nuedexta, do you want to tell us about that?
So Nuedexta is a medication that's fairly new on the market. It helps folks with traumatic brain injuries or strokes where their pons are damaged, and mine were. And the result of that is you will either cry for unknown reasons or no reasons at all, or could laugh. And mine is crying. And I do have that issue, and I don't know why, but I could be at dinner in public and sitting at the table and having a normal conversation, then I cry. And I know at work I have an office all to myself, but there are times where, for whatever reason, I just cry. So that is a medication that helps prevent that. It won't prevent another stroke, but it helps that symptom, and it's a good medication, but you can't miss it. So the Eliquis, the Nuedexta, and metoprolol, you have to be spot on with.
And then I think a lot of people take atorvastatin at night, but it's really whatever works best for you. Some people feel like they don't have side effects from it if they take it at night. Is that your experience too?
They started me on atorvastatin. However, we had to stop it because of severe side effects. So now where we go next, we don't know, but we're trying to find that medicine that will work for that. So for the time being, I'm off the statins until they can figure out what do we need to do.
And there are other cholesterol medications, so I'm sure they'll come up with something that's a good match for you soon.
Yes.
You also have been very diligent to manage your blood sugar, as you talked about your insulin pump. And one thing that I think we really need to just remind people is uncontrolled high blood sugar, a hemoglobin A1C over 7 doubles your risk for stroke. So even if you don't have high blood pressure or cholesterol, if you have high blood sugar, that puts you at a pretty high risk for stroke. But you've been doing a great job managing yours. What was your last hemoglobin A1C?
My last A1C was 5.1. That's typically where my A1C has averaged. I belong to a study group at Vanderbilt University, which is called the EDIC. Originally, it was called the DCCT, which is the Diabetes Control and Complications Trial. And that is actually the study that put insulin pumps on the market for all people.
Wow.
And that was a study that was combined of 40 sites throughout the US and Canada. And I've been in that study since the inception, so over 37 years.
Congratulations. I didn't even know that. He is dropping knowledge on me today. I do want to emphasize back to the traveling insights that you had. I think we had talked about before that when you were on these long multiple day trips with your friends, you could just go and go and go with a lot of stamina. But after having a stroke, it is really common to experience fatigue and have to alter your schedule in order to be able to do what you're capable of doing, but maybe take more breaks or plan on having one activity a day. Is that something that you experienced in your latest trip?
Yes. My daughter actually planned the itinerary, and so she planned multiple things to do that day, every day. I found myself having to sit down an awful lot and just rest and go run and do your thing, and I'll catch up. I do have another trip next July, so there is an item that's on my bucket list that's been there for years. I'm just going to go ahead and do it while we're out there.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to climb the Manitowoc Incline.
Does it have steps?
It has just shy of 3,000 steps, and they're railway ties.
Oh my gosh.
It's essentially a mile up on the trail, and it used to be a layman's term, an old rail car system that they could move things up and down the mountain or get people up and down the mountain. Now the tracks have been removed, the rail cars have been removed, and the rail ties are still there. And as you get to the top, it turns into about a 60-degree incline. So that's been a bucket list, and I'm afraid if I don't do it now, I'm not ever going to do it. So I'm going to do it, but I'll be out there a week and a half ahead of time with other activities, and so I do have to plan my week out there and what we're going to do to stay rested. With the help of everybody, that's going to happen.
That's great. And I think that's a great way to look at it too, as far as planning incrementally, right? Because you'll have like a less strenuous trip that's maybe a little bit shorter, and then gradually work up to it to test your stamina. So that's a really good measured approach. You'll be needing to fly for that, right?
No, I'm going to be riding with people out there.
Okay.
My wife will fly out later and join me, but we're going to be riding in a car. So I probably won't be doing a lot, if any, of the driving.
Well, that's good.
I'll be sitting in the co-pilot seat.
Oh, you're going to supervise? Is that what you're going to do?
If they listen, but no.
You'll supervise whether or not they listen, right?
Dad's an awful backseat driver.
So you're in the passenger seat, so then maybe you'll feel less anxious. But I think we should mention with altitude climbing, like you're talking about, as well as flying, because if you're flying, that's a high altitude. Either of those do increase your risk of stroke. The altitude because of increased likelihood of dehydration, for one thing, and then also and when you're flying, that's sitting a long time, and so a lot of people might experience their legs swelling on a flight, especially if it's a long flight. So wearing things like compression stockings and getting up to go to the bathroom every so often. You know, a lot of people don't want to climb over other passengers, so if you can select a seat based on that, that's one way you could plan ahead. But also just be your own advocate and know that I need to get up and walk for my own health and safety, and that's more important than convenience. Right. So congratulations, David, for just being such an amazing example of persistence and not letting this hold you back, but still going ahead and living your best life and doing it as responsibly as possible.
I want to be fixed now.
Now?
My kids can tell you I'm not the most patient person. So I do struggle with that.
But stubbornness can help in your recovery because you don't give up, right? Yeah. So, well, it's a pleasure having you on this Stronger After Stroke podcast today. So if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the Stronger After Stroke podcast so you'll be notified when there's another episode, and I'll see you then.